Chapter 6, continued.
They assembled at the Langdon house just before sunset. Reverend Lassiter was kind enough to supply chairs and a large folding table from his church, which he and Houdini set up with Gillette's help. The Hydes were clearly enamored by Sir Arthur and peppered him with questions about psychic phenomena, from thought transference to telekinesis. Reverend Lassiter was more in awe of Houdini, whom he pressed unsuccessfully for the secrets behind his mysteries. Gillette was ticked off that the couple failed to recognize him by name,
A name that had adorned so many theater marquees in decades past.
Not decked out in the deerstalker cap and cape, the actor attracted little notice and began to sulk as he realized that a mere magician was getting more attention than he. He, the rightful heir to Sir Henry Irving, and certainly superior to Barrymore, who was emerging as successor as Holmes to the aging Gillette. Sir Arthur noticed his friend's sour demeanor and came to the rescue, bringing over the Hydes.
"It's thanks to Gillette here that many of your countrymen ever heard of Sherlock Holmes,"
he said buoyantly, placing a hand on the actor's shoulder.
"He makes my hero of the printed page seem very anemic by comparison."
Gillette waved his hands. "Sheer nonsense. But do go on." The couple laughed. Reverend Lassiter, a long-faced man with the stern look of a 17th-century Puritan preacher, turned to Sir Arthur. "Some of my colleagues, as you know, condemn this spiritualism as a form of idolatry. I consider myself more liberal in my views and wish to see it in action firsthand. It does, though, make me uncomfortable that you insist on calling it a religion. Are you not a member of any church?" Sir Arthur smiled. He was quite prepared for this line of questioning.
"I was raised a Roman Catholic. As a young man, I came to see most of the teachings as superstition, and I switched my allegiance to science. But I've always been driven by a need to follow the truth wherever it leads me. It has led me here."
He gestured to the ballroom, where a table encircled by chairs had been made ready for the séance. "I see," the clergyman replied. "I, too, want to know the truth. If we can truly make contact with our loved ones on the other side and prove the immortality of the soul, well, who could argue that that is not a wondrous thing?"
"Precisely."
"I do have one concern about the proceedings." Noting Reverend Lassiter's discomfort, the author said,
"Will you excuse us for a moment, Gillette? I think the Hydes could use a good story about the theatre. Perhaps that colourful anecdote about Sarah Bernhardt and the French poodle."
When the actor was some distance away, Reverend Lassiter whispered to Conan Doyle confidentially, "I've heard that the young lady sometimes conducts her readings in the altogether. She won't, disrobe, will she?" Sir Arthur reassured him.
"Mrs. C. shall maintain all proper decorum. She fully understands the gravity of this matter, and is as committed to getting to the bottom of it as Houdini and myself."
Was it his imagination, or did the preacher look a trifle disappointed? The light from the windows was beginning to fade. Houdini placed a large candelabra, borrowed from the hotel in Dunwood, at the center of the table and lit it. A moment later, Eva entered the room arm in arm with a pot-bellied, middle-aged man with bushy red eyebrows and a most spectacular red beard. "This is Mr. Noah Bancroft from the Richmond Courier and Gazette," she announced.
"I hate to intrude," the newcomer said in a deep, rumbling drawl, "but when I heard that two of the most celebrated men in the country were both in the state, I hopped on the first train. I hope to interview you about your life's work, but this sounds one heck of a lot more interesting. Would you mind if I joined y'all?"
"Certainly not," Eva said. "I believe 7 in addition to medium is an ideal number for what we're about to undertake. In a few moments the sun will set, and the spiritual forces will be at their greatest strength. Then we can begin." The participants took their seats.
"I did a little research on this house in our archives," the newspaper man revealed. "The Algonquin Indians had a name for this area. They called it the Makadiwa, which means the Black. According to their legends, it was a kind of a shadow land, a halfway point between the spirit world and the ordinary world.
"Charming," said Gillette. "Just the sort of place one wishes to find oneself after sunset."
"Extraordinary," Conan Doyle declared. "This cast a whole new light on the matter. Good show, Bancroft."
He took an instant liking to the man who, with his full red beard and energetic manner, looked uncannily like Professor Challenger, or the author's equally florid medical school chum, Dr. George Budd, upon whom he modeled the maverick scientist.
"I also found out what became of the Frenchie who managed it," the reporter went on. "Died in the Great War at Verdun. I found a story about a traveling salesman who checked into the house and was never seen again. And there was a young fellow named Donald Langdon and a girl named Daisy Holcomb who visited the house for some reason 10 years ago and were never seen again. Others, maybe a dozen in all, before Parker."
Sir Arthur jotted this down in his notebook.
"Immensely helpful. We are indebted to you, sir."
They sat at the table, waiting for the sun to set. Houdini, checking his pocket watch, reckoned this would be in roughly 10 minutes.
"I don't mean to ruffle your feathers, Mr. Doyle, seeing as I know that spiritualism is more or less a religion to you. But I have to admit I'm a skeptic,"
Bancroft said.
"Not a bit offended, old man,"
Sir Arthur laughed.
"For years I was an absolute materialist myself. Believe me, in the medical profession it goes with the territory. I was entirely convinced that thoughts were merely excretions of the brain, as surely as bile is an excretion of the liver. Now I know that the brain is an imperfect vessel for the spirit, and that when it ceases to be, the spirit lives on. It is not unlike a violinist whose violin is destroyed. The instrument is shattered to bits, yet the musician remains."
The newspaperman shook his head dubiously.
"Still, I can't see how a man who makes up a character as logical as Sherlock Holmes could turn around and believe in ghosts."
Now Sir Arthur became solemn, and his deep voice with the Scottish brogue became as powerful as if he were delivering a sermon.
"Mr. Bancroft, with the aid of mediums, I have seen my departed mother and my brother Innes as plainly as I ever saw them in life. So plainly I could have counted the wrinkles on one and the freckles on the other. I have seen my son Kingsley as surely as I see you now. It was his unmistakable voice, which the medium had never heard. I have clasped the icy hands of spirits. I have smelled the peculiar ozone-like smell of ectoplasm. I have listened to prophecies which were soon afterward fulfilled. I have read notebooks written in the hand of my own wife, full of information utterly beyond her ken. If a man can see, hear, and feel all this, and yet remain unconvinced of unseen forces, well, you would have to be mad."
"Hear, hear!" exclaimed Mrs. Hyde, and her husband dutifully applauded.
"And yet,"
Bancroft said, turning to Houdini,
"you go around exposing mediums as frauds, left and right. Do you think the creator of the world's greatest detective is naive?"
Bancroft had his notebook out, and Houdini realized whatever he said was for publication.
"Well," he began uncomfortably. "Oh, he thinks I'm more Dr. Watson than Holmes, and I admit I look the part," Sir Arthur said with a hearty laugh. "And he's not alone in believing I suffer from prelapsarian naivety, as Shaw called it."
Bancroft said, puzzled and struggling over the spelling. "Before the great lapse, the fall of man," Reverend Lassiter whispered. "As naive as Adam, he means." Houdini shook his head. "I have the greatest admiration for Sir Arthur. He's brilliant. But I have found that the more brains a man has, and the better educated he is, the easier it is to pull the wool over his eyes." Conan Doyle looked amused.
To be sure, Houdini has done splendid work exposing scoundrels, but these investigations have to be approached not in the spirit of a detective grilling a suspect, but of a humble, religious soul seeking enlightenment. I fear my dear friend Houdini has a habit of delving into these matters like a terrier in pursuit of a rat. And this scares the ghosts away? Bancroft said, looking somewhat amused. It can upset the delicate balance, the mental harmony needed for psychic contact with the other realm.
Reverend Lassiter turned to the magician. I gather, then, that you consider yourself a non-believer. Do you not accept the existence of God in heaven? Of course I believe in a supreme being. My dear departed father was a rabbi from a long line of rabbis. But I don't necessarily believe that the creator of Mount Everest would stoop to something so profane as ectoplasm. When I was starting out in show business, my wife Bess and I did a mind-reading act and a medium show. All flim-flammery, of course. One night it dawned on me that we were trifling with people's beliefs in something sacred. We swore off medium shows on the spot. As he delivered the monologue, Houdini gave Eva a piercing gaze, which she met unblinkingly. I'm not a cynic, Mr. Bancroft, but like Sir Arthur, a seeker after the truth. I ardently want to believe, if I can find a medium, one who doesn't resort to tricks when the supposed power doesn't arrive, what I wouldn't give to speak to my sainted mother again or look into her eyes. I've traveled the world for years to unearth mediums so that I could find a true one. I regret to say that so far I haven't witnessed a single one that had a ring of sincerity. But Mrs. C., protested Mrs. Hyde. Houdini smiled. Yes, well, we'll put her powers to the test in a moment, won't we? Sir Arthur broke in, pointing out,
Houdini forgets, of course, his own remarkable experience with my wife, Lady Doyle, in which his own mother spoke to him.
Oh, do tell us about it, said Mrs. Hyde excitedly.
Well, it was all quite thrilling, the author began.
Sir Arthur, the time, Houdini protested. Do go on, Reverend Lassiter pleaded. We still have a few moments before dusk.
Sir Arthur went on enthusiastically. One afternoon earlier this year, Houdini sat beside me while my wife, who is adept at automatic writing, received a 15-page letter from his mother. It was an unforgettable scene, my wife's hand flying while she scribbled at a furious rate, me tearing off sheet after sheet and tossing them to him. You could see on his face how moved he became as he read her touching words. To my own beloved boy, how happy I am in this life over here.
Mrs. Hyde took the magician's hand. My dear fellow, how much this must have meant to you. Could you feel her presence? I would rather not speak about that very personal matter, Houdini said with a cold smile. Conan Doyle grinned at his friend.
I imagine he'll write about it soon. Houdini himself is living proof of the supernatural, though he won't admit it.
I've read about that in one of the Society's journals, said Mr. Hyde, that you use some kind of teleportation to get out of milk cans and pass through walls. Houdini shook his head. I've told Sir Arthur time and time again that I rely only on my own skill, strength, and misdirection to achieve my escapes and other mysteries, but he's hard-headed. As brilliant as he is, his skull is cement. Sir Arthur smiled warmly.
It's my friend who is hard-headed. He refuses to acknowledge that he resorts to preternatural means to achieve his most wonderful escapes, though it is obvious to any intelligent observer. Whether this is because he fears his brother magicians would give him the boot from the profession, or truly has no conscious awareness of his gift, I cannot be sure.
Gillette came away from the window, saying jauntily, This discussion is scintillating, but the sun is set, and I expect the ghosts are waiting. Very well, then we may continue, Eva said. Let us all sit close together.
Chapter 6 continued, Part 2.
Sir Arthur noticed that she wore the crystal talisman, and in fact toyed with it nervously as they took their seats. "Mr. Gillette, would you be so kind as to extinguish the candles?" she asked. "Here goes nothing," the actor said, and lowered the candle snuffer on each of the 7 flames on the candelabra. "I must ask for your own safety that once the session has begun, no one is to rise from his chair," Eva instructed them. When the last light was out, Gillette joined the others at the table. "Let us now clasp hands," the medium continued. Houdini took one of her hands, while Bancroft held the other. Sir Arthur sat between Mr. and Mrs. Hyde, who would be sure to boast of this at the next meeting of the Wolsterton Psychical Society. Houdini never made trouble by grabbing mediums or flicking on the lights without warning, as other investigators bent on exposing fraud did. He never left his chair or interfered with their manifestations in any way. Instead, he would simply wait until the end of the proceedings and explain how the trick was done. Typically, mediums shook in their boots when he was on the case. So it was with Mrs. C now. She could barely keep her knees from knocking. The magician was quite sure of this, and took no small satisfaction because his leg was pressed against hers. She suspected, quite correctly, that this was so he could detect any attempt on her part to get up during the séance or to use her knees to levitate the table. Still, she presented a calm front to their guests. "I must ask all who are present to remain absolutely silent. Clear your heads of all negative thoughts," she ordered them solemnly. Several moments passed, and the only sound that could be heard was gentle breathing. Houdini was aware of Eva's perfume, a fragrance that was impudently provocative, and the remnants of cigar smoke in Bancroft's jacket. Reverend Lassiter's sweaty hand trembled. The reporter broke the silence with his booming voice.
"What's supposed to happen?"
"Shh!" whispered Mrs. Hyde. The temperature of the room began rapidly to dip. "I can see my breath," marveled Reverend Lassiter. There came a sound like an approaching freight train. The walls began to rattle and the floor shook under them. "Is it a whirlwind?" asked Hyde. "Should we go down to the storm cellar?" From somewhere in the distance, whether from below, outside, or above, a deep alto voice began to sing the Negro spiritual, "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot."
"Did you see that?"
"A face!" bellowed the reporter. "I don't see anything," cried Reverend Lassiter. "Where?" He squeezed Houdini's hand fearfully, and the magician winced from the fingernails biting in.
"Over there!"
cried Bancroft.
"Doesn't anyone else see it? An old woman."
Houdini looked about, expecting to see a slide of a ghostly face projected on a wall, as he had at 100 séances, but saw nothing. "I don't see her, but I can feel her presence," declared Mrs. Hyde.
"I do as well,"
echoed her husband.
"Damn it, there's a hand on my shoulder,"
cried Bancroft.
"Don't get up,"
Sir Arthur warned him.
"Couldn't if I wanted to. It's as strong as a gosh darn gorilla."
Eva tried to restore order.
"Please, all of you, try to remain calm. Spirits of the house, we mean you no harm. We are listening. Tell us who you are."
For about 45 seconds there was absolute silence. Then a woman's voice, full of anguish, cried,
"We are here, the 13, the lost ones. Please free us."
Another voice, male, shouted,
"Leave us and don't come back, or the house will claim you too. Save your souls."
Eva began to moan.
Oh, 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 oh.
Her shrieks were intense, as if she were being suddenly and repeatedly violated.
"No, stay out of me,"
the young medium cried.
"What's wrong with her?"
cried Bancroft.
"Mr. Doyle, should we do something?" "Steady,"
Sir Arthur said calmly. Shrill laughter filled the room, the mocking cackle of a witch, perhaps emanating from the medium. The high-pitched laughter lasted no more than a minute, though even that was intolerable. Then Eva's spirit seemed to reassert itself.
"Pray,"
she cried, prying her hand out of Houdini's. "For the love of God, pray now. Release your hands and pray." Everyone pulled away their hands, interlaced their fingers, and began to pray.
"O Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name,"
Reverend Lassiter cried at the top of his lungs.
"Yea, though I walk through the shadow of death,"
Mr. Hyde sputtered in raw terror. Sir Arthur's voice, forthright and fearless, intoned,
"Imprisoned spirits of the house, please permit no harm to come to us."
"Well, I've had about enough entertainment for one night," Gillette announced. "I'm lighting the candles." "I say, what the devil?" Crash! An object struck the wall. "Something tore it right out of my hand," the actor hollered. Mrs. Hyde screeched in horror.
"It's coming for you now,"
shouted a deep male voice that seemed to echo from all sides. Eva let out a cry and fell to the floor. All the others were on their feet and stampeding for the door. "Open the door. There's a light in the hall," said Gillette.
"I can't see. I can't find the handle,"
Reverend Lassiter cried.
"It's gone."
"Oof!" cried Bancroft as he accidentally bashed into Mr. Hyde. They grappled for a moment.
"Let go of me!"
Hyde shrieked.
"Let go of me!"
Bancroft bellowed in return. Mrs. Hyde screamed,
"The room! We're trapped like those others! We're all going to die! We're going to die!"
"Mr. Hyde, please endeavor to keep your wife at ease,"
said Sir Arthur, by nature immune to panic.
"We know only that the room is dark. Everyone try to keep a level head." "A level head?"
Mr. Hyde shrieked.
"We're in hell's anteroom."
Behind them, the door flew open, and they turned to see Houdini standing at the entrance. "It's okay, everyone." The rest of them were gathered on the far side of the room. It became obvious that in the darkness they'd become disoriented. Eva, they saw, was sprawled on the floor, her chair a small distance away from the table. Sir Arthur rushed to her side and revived her.
"My poor dear, are you all right?"
She gasped like a drowning victim suddenly revived.
"That must have been extraordinarily draining for you. What a good deal of psychic energy that spectacle must have consumed."
"It was awful, as if something was inside of me, something repellent and hateful."
Conan Doyle saw that the talisman that hung from her neck was blackened. He shuddered to think of what might have happened if she hadn't been wearing it. Gillette retrieved the candelabra, which was badly bent, from a corner of the room. "Something hurled it clear across the room," Gillette marveled as he brought it back and rested it on the table. "I'm not ashamed to admit I was scared silly. I commend you, Sir Arthur, for keeping the old stiff upper lip." A short time later, the guests of the Peaceful Rest Inn donned their coats and hats at the foyer. Bancroft pumped Conan Doyle's hand.
"What a story I'll have for the paper. This sure was a humdinger. Are all your seances like that?"
The author, perspiring a bit, patted his forehead with his monogrammed handkerchief.
"This might have been a wee bit more lively than usual."
Reverend Lassiter, pale as the proverbial sheet, squeaked out hardly a word before he scurried out. Mrs. Hyde practically had to be carried to the car by her husband, who glared at their hosts on the way out. Gillette was the least frazzled of the invitees as he said so long to Sir Arthur, Houdini, and Eva. "Well, it was a delight meeting you, Houdini, and I'll be ever grateful to you for finding that doorknob," he said, shaking the magician's hand. "Sir Arthur, thank you for an invigorating evening." He took Eva's hand and kissed it. "Madam, it's been a pleasure, and if you ever have the occasion to hold another séance, be sure to throw away my phone number." The alter ego of Sherlock Holmes turned at the door and frowned. "In all seriousness, gentlemen, I really do suggest you clear out of here." When they returned to the hotel in Dunwood, Houdini walked Eva to her room. "That was a crackerjack performance," he said. "All those voices. I'm a pretty good ventriloquist, but I can't throw my voice like that. And what a range. You ought to be an opera singer." Eva shook her head. "I have no idea what you're talking about. When you let go of our hands to pray, you got up from the chair to grab the candelabra and throw it," he said. "You've got a pretty good arm for a dame." Eva scowled. "How dare you accuse me of such a crass thing? Have I offended you in some way? When we unclasped our hands, you moved away from me." "Yes, I felt your leg against mine, and quite frankly, such intimate contact made me rather uncomfortable." "Oh, that's rich," laughed Houdini. "I know, because when you got up to go around the table, I moved your chair. That's why you fell and made such a racket. Hope you didn't hurt your keister." She covered her mouth in dismay. "I didn't say anything in front of Sir Arthur's guests out of respect for him," he went on. "I see." She paused for a thought, then said quietly, "Thank you. You had the opportunity to humiliate me, which I imagine would have given you a great deal of satisfaction. I am in your debt. Do you wish to collect right now?" Houdini stepped back, mortified. He shook his head. "You can tell Sir Arthur about it, or I will, and that's the end of it." She gave a small smile devoid of happiness. "You are a gentleman, then?" He shrugged contemptuously. "You put applesauce on the table. Sure, I smell it, but I've walked through an orchard before. I don't have to taste it." She bowed her head. Her cheeks reddened, those golden ringlets falling about her flawless china doll face. Her beauty made it difficult to revile her. "You've earned the right to insult me, of course," she said. "But you should know that, although I did the voices, there were manifestations I had nothing to do with. The coal, the walls rattling, the face Mr. Bancroft saw, none of that was my doing. This I swear." Houdini smirked. "Sure, upon your honor, I guess." "Under the circumstances, I know I can't ask you to take my word." He shook his head, growing uncertain now. "The face that only Bancroft saw?" "He doesn't seem like a man given to flights of fancy, does he?" "I don't know what he's like, only that he writes for some little hayseed rag I've never heard of. How do I know you didn't recruit him to be a show? Using your charm?" Eva bit her lip. Tears began to roll from her emerald green eyes, and she bowed her head. "This isn't as much fun as I expected," Houdini admitted to himself. "No fun at all. But damn me if this scheming little fraud, with her loose morals, lies, and crocodile tears, is going to make me feel sorry for her." "I just want to know one thing," he said sternly. "I just want to know what your angle is. You're not in this racket for the money. Your family has plenty of dough. Your name isn't in the paper, so you're not after fame." She raised her chin and met his eyes. "I suppose I want to feel special. Do you understand, Mr. Houdini?" Her earnest look startled him. "A hunger to be unique, to be number one, to have the spotlight consuming you insatiably?" "Oh, sure, I understand," he thought. He smiled ruefully. "Harry's fine." She suddenly clutched his forearm. "And I really have felt things. When I was a little girl, when my grandmother died, I could sense her in the house." Houdini rolled his eyes. Eva sighed and nodded. "Yes, I can't expect you to give any credence to what I say now. Well, now, I'm rather tired, so—" He took her hand. "Good night, Eva." "Good night, Harry."